Tonight's focus on technology and innovation looks at two Valley high schools set to participate in the first Robotics World Championships in St. Louis in late April. Teams from Hayden High School in Phoenix and Highland High in Gilbert will compete at the event. And here to talk more about all this is Frank Neuperger. He's a mentor to the robotics teams at both schools. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll start with Highland High School here and then go to Hayden. You have to win did both schools have to win state championships to make it to this world championship?
Yeah, any school that wins a state championship can make it in. They can also win what's called the Chairman's Award or the equivalent in the other competitions. So there's multiple ways they can get into it.
Okay, so let's start with Highland High School. What did their robot do?
The robot basically drove around in a 12-foot by 12-foot field, gathering balls, put them into small plastic crates, and then they would have to lift them as high as possible. So there was a very, very small robot that would unfold itself into something that was about 9 feet tall to get that crate way up in the air.
And getting it way up in the air was kind of the clincher, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a tough thing to do, and we didn't get it right the first time around.
Interesting. Yeah. And again, this robot has to move on its own accord,
yes,
its own power. And what, remote control by the kids?
It's remote control by the kids, but for the first 30 seconds, the robot thinks for itself. So it actually drives down off a platform, all under computer control. The kids program it in terms of what it will do, where it will turn, how far it will move. And at the beginning, it has to roll a bowling ball from a certain position on the field into one of the corners of the field for an extra number of points.
And we're seeing robots here shooting baskets, and actually the Suns could use some of that kind of business right now. For the competition, there are parameters, correct? You've got to build within certain limits?
Sure, and the game is different every year. So you don't know what it's going to be until the game is announced every year. So the general construction is the same every year in terms of the weight and the size of the robot, but the task as to what they do. Some years they play soccer, some years they play basketball, some years they do something completely abstract with game pieces on the field.
So how long from design to fully operational?
In the large robots, which you saw just a moment ago, they were announced on the first Saturday in January, and they basically have 6 weeks to decide how they're going to play that game, what the design is going to be for the robot, and then fabricate the robot, get a little bit of driving experience on that robot, and they have to lock that into a crate or a large plastic bag at the end of the 6 weeks, and then the next time they see that robot's on the playing field.
Oh my goodness.
So it's very tough.
So we got a team of kids there from Highland, and we'll get to Hayden here in a second, but how are the teams chosen? Where are these kids coming to? Is there a competition to be on the team?
There's not much of a competition to be on the team. We usually start out with about 15, maybe 20 students at the beginning of the year, and then some wither away. It's an extracurricular club, so it's not really curriculum at the school. And by the time we're at the competition, we generally have, there's 3 on the field, and we'll have about maybe another 3 or 4 at the actual competition. So withers down to about half.
The Hayden kids now have been there before, correct?
Yeah.
And they're going back again?
Hayden's been to the World Finals multiple times. This will be the second time they've been there because they won a regional championship.
Yes. So, and again, their robot, do we know what their robot does?
Their robot is...
Will basically have to do the same things, correct?
There are 2 different competitions.
Okay.
Hayden and the Highland are 2 different classes of competition. Okay. So they compete in the same place, but they're 2 completely different competitions. The Highland one's a small robot on a smaller field, and the Hayden one is a very large robot on a 50 by 27 foot field with 6 robots on the field, 3 on each side. So they're alliances of robots. So 3 robots work together against the 3 other robots on the other side of the field. Whereas with the Highland, it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Even from year to year, some of the parents take a while to understand the game and how it's played, and they're asking each other in the stands how it works. It's very complicated. So complicated that the guy that come up with the whole thing, Dean Kamen, he actually patented the process of the game in terms of how the teams are chosen, how many on the field, the size of the field, the control system. They actually patented that.
And I guess at Hayden School, they also have some underwater robots that are going to be a competition as well with the naval. I think the naval office is involved with this too?
Yes, it's one of the naval test pools that they use for ultrasonic and sonar testing, that sort of thing. They're going to be doing that in the summertime, and the task of those robots is completely autonomous. I mean, they put that robot in the water, the diver lets it go, and it is on its own completely. There's no human control at all. So they had to, ahead of time, program it to do all the different tasks that it has to do.
And this is competition now against other high schools, other colleges as well?
Yes, colleges, universities, can compete in that competition. So there's not really a limit as to who can do it.
You mentor both schools here, and I know that your garage is kind of like ground zero for a lot of the tinkering that goes on. How did you get involved in all this?
2007, my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, do you want to go to a robotics meeting?" And the teacher's really looking for people that can like do stuff, build stuff. Parents that are maybe engineers, and got into it, and I was hooked.
You were hooked, and the kids obviously get a lot out of it. I mean, it's just not a lot of discipline problems here, I would imagine. It's everyone's...
Not really. Everybody's pretty serious about what they want to do. There's a lot of people that think, hey, that you guys do the robots, and it's really, we're not really building robots. We're making engineers, we're making scientists, we're making math teachers.
Talk more about that, the idea, the impact of these competitions and just the activities, the impact on learning, the impact on innovation.
It's really good. It's really meant to simulate what a small startup technical company experiences. There's generally not enough money, there's not enough people, there's not enough time, and not enough information often. And they purposely do that. They give you equipment for the competition as part of the robot kit that isn't as well documented as maybe it should be if you're buying that in industry, that kind of thing. And they want you to experience that difficulty that, you know, I don't know, I've got to do the research, I've got to figure it out.
Do you see the lights kind of going on at times with kids who kind of come in all gung-ho and then realize that there are obstacles in the way?
Yeah, you know, the discipline of the design process so that you can get everybody on the same sheet of paper without a whole lot of contention, that's kind of a new thing for most people, even adults, that there's some adults that get involved and they, you know, there's a lot of ideas in the beginning and that sort of thing and say, hey, wait a minute, let's take a step back, let's get the requirements figured out. And it's the formal process of engineering based on requirements, and that cuts down a lot of the contention. So that's one of the realizations that comes out of the whole thing.
When you hear the kids talking and when you see where the kids go from here, where do they go from there?
Most of our kids, almost 100% under my watch anyways, end up in mechanical or electrical engineering, usually some field of engineering. There's a few that go into science or medicine, that kind of thing, but mostly in engineering.
When the two contests in the contest, I should say, in St. Louis, sponsored by First, you mentioned Dean Kamen, who kind of came up with this. Talk to us about this. A nonprofit, correct?
Correct.
And that's out of, where's it based out of?
It's based out of New Hampshire, and it's a nonprofit, and they organize about $14 million worth of scholarships a year that these kids can apply for, either as juniors or seniors. So that's part of the process. There's a scholarship process as well as the structure of the whole thing.
Last question, the cost to build these robots. How much and where's the money coming from?
The money generally comes from sponsors, either corporate sponsors. A lot of it comes out of Arizona tax credits. Really fortunate in the state that they can do that. And for the large robot, the first competition in the kit cost about $6,000. Each additional competition, as well as the World Finals, cost another $5,000. So it wasn't unusual when Highland was in that FRC Classic competition. We'd spend about $4,000 a student.
Wow. Well, good luck to both teams. This is very encouraging to hear. It's nice to have a good educational story on the show for a change. And again, good luck and thank you for joining us.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thursday on Arizona.